I lost the use of my legs saving my childhood friend, only for him to accuse me of orchestrating the accident to separate him from the girl he loved. For that, he hated me for a lifetime. Before he died, he told me, if I could go back, I'd rather be crippled than ever see you again. When I opened my eyes, I had returned to the moment of his car accident. This time, I let him be. I wouldn't save him again in this life. The smell of disinfectant overwhelmed my nose. My parents were crying hysterically outside the operating room, but my eardrums throbbed so painfully that I couldn't make out what they were saying. It wasn't until my mother shook my arm desperately and shouted, "Emma, go comfort your uncle and aunt," that I snapped out of it. Just as I turned my head, the doctor emerged with a solemn expression and informed Ethan's parents, "Prepare yourselves mentally. The car ran over his ankle, causing a comminuted fracture. His life is not in danger, but his foot will never fully recover." The implication was clear. Ethan would be crippled. Ethan's mother fainted on the spot, while I stood there, staring blankly at my own legs, perfectly intact, evenly proportioned, and capable of fitting into regular shoes. I had been reborn. In my previous life, on a late night when Ethan was heading home, he stumbled upon a girl on the street. Drawn to her fragility, he impulsively took her in. The two quickly developed feelings for each other. But Ethan's parents disapproved of her and demanded he send her back to her family. One day at dinner, his parents voiced their disdain bluntly. "Think about it, Ethan. What kind of girl wanders the streets at 3 a.m.? Ethan frowned. "I already told you. She had a fight with her parents. And having a fight means she can casually move into a boy's house after knowing him for just a few hours? Don't be so naive, Ethan. Look at Liam. Ask his parents if they would allow something like that." I kept my head down, silently eating, but I could feel the tension rising. Ethan slammed his utensils down and stormed out. In my past life, worried that he'd act recklessly, I chased after him. I didn't hear what he shouted at me, but I saw a runaway truck speeding toward us. On instinct, I pushed Ethan out of the way, only to have my own ankle crushed under the vehicle. From that moment on, I was crippled. My right foot swelled unnaturally, forcing me to wear custom size 11 shoes. Racked with guilt, Ethan proposed to me a few days later. "What about her?" I asked, shrugging indifferently. He replied, "My parents disapprove anyway. Why bother holding on to something that's hopeless?" He sounded so casual, but after our marriage, he treated me with nothing but disdain. More than once, I drank myself into oblivion, only for the alcohol to worsen my condition. Eventually, my foot became infected, and the untreated injury led to amputation. I overheard Ethan complaining to his parents, "A cripple is no better than dead. Why doesn't she just die?" My life had fallen apart because I once chose to save him, yet he wanted me dead. In the dead of night, amidst the silence, I turned on the gas in the house. As the flames erupted, I saw Ethan desperately searching for a way out, but there was no escape. Before we perished, he screamed at me, "If I could go back, I'd rather be crippled than ever see you again." Now, Reborn, I chose differently. When Ethan ran out that night, I stayed behind. In my previous life, he would often joke bitterly, "If you hadn't come after me, I wouldn't have turned around in the street, and maybe neither of us would have been hurt." But fate wouldn't change. What was meant to happen, happened. While I mused about life's cruel irony, a howl of anguish broke through the quiet of the hospital room. Ethan had woken up. He couldn't accept the reality of being crippled. "Son, stay still," his mother sobbed. "The doctor said you had a comminuted fracture. It's a miracle you've healed this much." I turned to see Ethan climbing out of bed, determined to walk on his injured foot. He barely managed a step before collapsing to the floor, crying, "No, it's just a simple fracture. I can't be crippled." Ethan's mother covered her mouth, suppressing her sobs. My heart ached as I watched her. In my past life, she had always cared for me tenderly. Now, seeing her heartbroken over such an ungrateful son, I could only sigh. I stepped forward, called for a nurse, and tried to help Ethan back to bed. But he shoved me away. "Leave me alone. I can walk on my own." The nurse hesitated, but I stopped her. For the first time, the roles were reversed. In my past life, I had looked up at Ethan from the ground, helpless. Now, I watched him flounder from above. Back then, he had accused me of staging the accident to break him and his beloved apart. That hatred poisoned our entire marriage. Once, while trying to move myself from bed to wheelchair, I slipped and fell to the floor, along with the chair. I struggled on the floor for what felt like an eternity, unable to get up. Finally, I lifted my head and caught a glimpse of Ethan in the mirror. He was hiding behind the door, watching me with an expression of glee. My heart turned ice cold. A voice broke through my memories. Ethan, stop messing around and focus on recovering. Please. Your mom is begging you. Mrs. Taylor's trembling figure tugged at my chest, and I sighed softly. Ethan, if you keep at this, the swelling in your ankle will worsen, and it'll grow so large you won't even fit into a shoe anymore. The nurse glanced at me, her expression questioning how I knew this. Of course I knew. I had suffered through all of it myself in my past life. How could I forget? This time, I wanted no involvement with Ethan, but my mother, bound by the years-long bond with our neighbors, insisted I go to pick Ethan up from the hospital. When his cast was removed, the stench hit me immediately, a mix of unwashed sweat and the plaster's musty odor. It was so strong that I reflexively stepped back. Ethan, lying in bed, gripped the sheets tightly, his pride clear as ever. How would he cope with this in the future? On the way home, I casually asked about his injury. Wasn't it because of that girl? She hasn't come to see you these past few days. Ethan's parents exchanged angry glances at the mention of her name. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan press his lips into a thin line before reluctantly speaking. Tanya said she's been busy but promised to come by in a few days to take care of me. Having grown up with Ethan, I knew exactly what he meant. Stubborn pride. As always, Mrs. Taylor opened her mouth to say something but stopped when Mr. Taylor placed a hand on hers. I, however, wasn't feeling charitable. Let him do whatever he wants, I told Mrs. Taylor. He's already injured and upset. If he's happy, it'll help him recover faster. I don't ask for much, just that Ethan and Tanya be together forever and stop ruining anyone else's life. Mrs. Taylor looked at me, wanting to say something, but ultimately stayed silent. How could I not understand her meaning? Ethan and I had grown up together, and the adults in both families had tacitly assumed we'd end up together. As for my feelings for Ethan, I tilted my head, trying to remember when that naive affection had begun. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but I could recall when it had started to fade. Perhaps when he yelled at me over a misunderstanding, or when he forgot my birthday while I was busy helping him get home. In any case, I wasn't the kind to cling to the past. I had no intention of interfering in anything related to Ethan anymore. I only hoped he and Tanya would have their happily ever after, though I couldn't help but wonder if Tanya could endure the trials ahead. Our houses were standalone villas, and despite being neighbors, I could easily avoid him for days as long as I didn't deliberately walk by. The next time I saw Ethan was a week later, when Tanya was pushing his wheelchair around the neighborhood. I had just returned from the grocery store with my mom. Auntie, let me formally introduce you, Ethan said, his voice filled with pride. This is my fiancée, Tanya. Under the mottled shadows of tree leaves, Ethan's face lit up with a genuine, unrestrained smile that was hard to ignore. My mom and I smiled, congratulating them, but Tanya gently pulled her hand away from Ethan's. Ethan, don't say that, she muttered shyly. My parents don't know about us yet. After so many years, that old glimmer of triumph returned to Ethan's face. You want to marry me, and I want to marry you, Tanya. It's as good as done. I didn't have the heart to shatter Ethan's carefully crafted bubble of happiness. At home, my mom couldn't stop sighing. Poor Ethan. He used to be so tall and strong. And now, she trailed off. I shook my head. It's his choice, both in the last life and this one. My mom gave me a look but said nothing, her gaze drifting toward the Taylor house. Following her line of sight, I saw Mrs. Taylor sitting absent-mindedly on the swing in her garden. Seemed like overnight, her hair had turned visibly grayer. In my past life, Ethan constantly blamed me for ruining his chance to marry Tanya. If not for your interference, he'd say, we'd be married with kids by now. I'd always argued back. I never wanted to marry you. Wasn't it you who insisted you were responsible for my injury? That I was your burden to bear. The cold reality was that Ethan never let go of his belief that I had schemed to trap him into marriage. Once, he'd stared at my swollen leg with a mix of disdain and anger, bidding out, "Stop pretending. Emma, I know you've always liked me and wanted to marry me. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? You and my mom must have plotted this to guilt-trip me into it." Back then, I had wondered bitterly why I, Emma Carter, competent and capable in every way, would ruin my life for a man who couldn't even see the truth. Now, as Mrs. Taylor hastily wiped away her tears upon noticing us, I lowered my gaze, unwilling to comment. Ethan still believed Tanya was his destined match. Little did he know that in my previous life, I discovered Tanya's true intentions. She was only after a wealthy man. Ethan's path home wasn't one she'd accidentally wandered onto once but 10 times. Few days later, Mrs. Taylor brought over an engagement party invitation. Her eyes held a trace of regret as she handed it to my mom. "Emma," she said with a small smile, "you'll come, won't you?" I handed the invitation to my mom and replied calmly, "Sorry, Auntie, I'll be busy. My friend and I are opening a guest house, and I need to be there for the opening." In my past life, when I was confined to a wheelchair and ignored by Ethan, only my college roommate had come to care for me. I owed her a debt I could never repay. Now, I wanted to help her before life could take another harsh turn. I took her to another city, helping her start over and rebuild her life. It was my way of showing gratitude for everything she had done for me when no one else cared. Mrs. Taylor froze for a moment, surprised by my sudden decision. "You're leaving so suddenly?" she asked. I simply nodded, unwilling to explain further. That night, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, to my surprise, it was Ethan. He was leaning on crutches, his right foot swollen so much that he could only wear oversized slippers. I frowned and instinctively tried to close the door, but Ethan suddenly reached out to stop me. We stared at each other for a moment before he pulled a handful of wedding candy from his pocket. "I heard you're leaving to open a guest house in another city, so you won't be able to attend my engagement party." I nodded but didn't take the candy. He was silent for a while before awkwardly apologizing. "About what I said during dinner last time. I didn't mean it. I was just upset with my mom. Don't take it personally." What had he said? Oh, right. Mrs. Taylor had disapproved of Tanya and hinted that Ethan and I should be together instead. Furious, Ethan had lashed out at me, shouting, "That's impossible. I have no feelings for Emma whatsoever. Just drop it." I couldn't tell if he had been speaking to me or to his mother. But now, none of that mattered. I smiled faintly. "I need to pack my things. You should go home." The next day, I met up with my friend, and we flew out of town. The guest house business turned out better than expected, drawing crowds of visitors. We heard countless stories from our guests, each one unique and fascinating. One night, while we were hosting a late-night gathering, drinking and singing with the guests, my friend Quinn suddenly remarked, "Emma, you've changed a bit." I blinked at her. "Changed? How? You're so capable now, doing everything yourself. I remember in college you were nothing like this. Back then, you couldn't even drink a glass of water without asking me to help you with your bed tray." Her exaggerated tone made me burst into laughter. In my past life, after dropping out of college, I had needed help with everything. This time, I was determined to repay every kindness and do things on my own. It was a year later when I saw Ethan again. I had just returned home and noticed that the Taylors were moving out. I happened to run into Mr. Taylor, but as soon as he recognized me, he turned and walked away. It was completely different from what I had expected. "Mom, where are the Taylors moving to?" I asked with mild curiosity, sensing that something must have happened between the two families while I was gone. My mother frowned but waved off the question. From my bedroom window, I could see Ethan moving around with crutches. His right leg was so stiff it couldn't touch the ground. At one point, Mr. Taylor lost his temper and kicked Ethan squarely in the backside, just like he used to do when Ethan misbehaved as a child. But this time, the few words I overheard suggested something was seriously wrong. "And Tanya?" My obvious curiosity earned me a sweat from my mom. "Weren't they engaged?" she said irritably. Mr. Taylor couldn't do much when Ethan was so insistent on marrying her. And look at Ethan now. Where would he find another girlfriend? My mother had always been empathetic, but I cut her off. After a bit of probing, I finally got the full story. Tanya had scammed Ethan out of 1.88 million yuan in dowry money. While both families were relatively well off, this was a massive blow. The Taylors had gone ahead with the engagement, transferring the dowry to Tanya's account during the party. But 3 months later, Tanya announced she'd had a miscarriage and demanded to break off the engagement, causing a huge scene at the Taylor house. She had the audacity to say, "This cripple couldn't even protect our baby. What's the point of marrying him? I have to call this off." Ethan was completely blindsided. Mrs. Taylor, naturally, was reluctant to let the engagement end so easily. In the end, they agreed Tanya could leave if she returned the 1.88 million. But Tanya's family refused, claiming the money was compensation for the miscarriage and that they wouldn't give back a single cent. And so, the Taylors lost both their money and their reputation. After spending most of their lives in this neighborhood, they were now too humiliated to stay. After hearing the full story, I lost interest in the Taylors' drama. I never expected Ethan to reach out to me directly, but one day, he messaged me, asking to meet in the neighborhood garden. Without hesitation, I declined, but my mother urged me to at least try to talk some sense into him. Ethan showed up late, limping unsteadily over the gravel path. When he saw me sitting there calmly, his face turned awkward. "Do you think I'm stupid? Everyone in this neighborhood thinks I'm the biggest fool." I didn't respond immediately, letting the silence stretch between us. I was craving the sweet and sour ribs my mom made, so I answered without thinking. About a year. Ethan had lost a lot of weight. His clothes, once all expensive brand names, were now plain and ill-fitting. He looked disheveled. With a bitter laugh, he shifted his heavy, swollen right foot. "Look at this foot. I really feel like cutting it off." I replied evenly, "Well, if you keep wallowing like this, you might not be far from that." The 1.88 million may not have completely bankrupted the Taylors, but it was enough to shake their financial stability. After a moment of silence, Ethan suddenly looked at me seriously. "Emma, if I told you that Tanya's baby wasn't mine, would you believe me?" His words caught me off guard, and my shock was evident. Ethan gave a bitter smile, pointing at his swollen foot. "Look at me now. This foot is so swollen it hurts to even touch. What could I possibly have done? Tanya faked everything. It was all lies." He put his hands on his hips, looking up at the sky. The more he tried to act indifferent, the more the pain showed on his face. "She found herself a rich guy and wanted to get rid of me quickly. That's all there is to it. But Tanya, she doesn't just break hearts. She crushes them. She cheated on me and then turned it around to make me the villain. She even pocketed the dowry money without a second thought. I wonder if she ever regrets it." Ethan hesitated, then asked, "You used to hate hearing her name. But that day when I stormed out, you didn't try to stop me. Why?" I didn't know how to answer. Men, no matter the situation, always find a way to put the blame on someone else. Not wanting to continue the conversation, I stood up and maintained a polite but clear distance. "I'm leaving now. Don't contact me unless it's necessary." Just as I was about to walk away, Ethan grabbed my wrist. "If you had stopped me back then, would the outcome have been different?" I pulled my hand free and spoke firmly. "No. And I wouldn't have tried to stop you. This trip home was supposed to be a short vacation for me, and I also wanted to give my friend Quinn enough time to handle her own matters. Fate, however, works in mysterious ways. She and her boyfriend had gone through countless ups and downs, but they still ended up together. I didn't interfere or try to break them up. All I did was ensure Quinn had some financial security. Over the 3 years we ran the guest house together, I split everything with her 50-50. My savings grew steadily, but Quinn had nothing left. Her boyfriend had taken it all. I was just glad she finally saw him for the gambler he was before they got married. After not visiting home for a year, my return felt like a royal reception. But after just 1 week, my mom slammed the door when she came inside. Startled, I jumped out of bed and grabbed a stack of cash from my bag, jokingly holding it out. "Here. Is this enough to calm you down?" But then I noticed her red, tear-filled eyes. "What happened?" I asked, dropping my teasing tone. She sighed and sat down. Your father and I had a fight. And after living as neighbors with the Taylors for over a decade, this is the first time I've pointed at their house and cursed them. What happened? I asked cautiously. They said the Taylor family business ran into some trouble, so I went over to offer help. And do you know what Mrs. Taylor had the nerve to say? My mom's voice shook with anger as tears fell from her eyes. She said I should come home and convince you to marry Ethan. I was speechless. What kind of shameless request was that? She said Ethan didn't understand things properly and claimed she could tell you still had feelings for him. My mom continued. But where were they when Ethan treated you so poorly? Why didn't they discipline their son back then? I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Did they seriously think I'd marry Ethan just to take care of their mess? We raised our daughter well. Why should she marry into their family to become their nanny? It's not like you can't find someone better. Mom started stealing glances at me, her voice softening. Emma, you two did grow up together. Are you sure there's no chance? I cut her off, shoving the money into her hands. Absolutely not. Don't even think about it. I'd rather die than marry Ethan again. As for the Taylors, it looked like they were on the verge of ruining themselves. No intervention was necessary. In my past life, the breaking point between Ethan and me came after a drunken night. I thought he'd finally given up on Tanya. 6 months into our marriage, Ethan unexpectedly joined me for dinner and drinks. Halfway through, I began crying into my knees. I was in my 20s, the prime of my life, and I was a cripple. To my surprise, Ethan's cold demeanor softened. He gently held my face and wiped away my tears. Don't cry. You have me now. Through teary eyes, I looked at him, struggling to believe the tender man in front of me was real. His sweet words broke through the last of my defenses. I clung to his neck, sobbing uncontrollably. Ethan, I can never wear heels again. He lightly patted my back. It's okay. I know you got hurt saving me. If not for you, I wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you now. I pulled back to look at him, asking softly, really? After knowing each other for 20 years. I knew what Ethan looked like when he was truly happy. After we got married, he was never happy. I could tell. But back then, Ethan wiped away my tears one by one and swore to me it was true. And you, Emma Carter, do you like me? Or, rather, have you always wanted to marry me? The feelings I had buried in my youth were suddenly laid bare. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like it might burst. Under his intense gaze, I admitted, I do. But then I saw it. The warmth in Ethan's eyes faded, replaced by mockery. He stood up, wincing in pain, and put distance between us. Pointing a finger at my nose, he sneered. Shameless. Just because you wanted it. You set up this whole elaborate act to trap me into marrying you. I'll never get to marry the one I truly love. All because of you. Are you satisfied now? Emma Carter, I feel sick for having lived with you for 20 years. The alcohol-induced warmth vanished instantly. I stared at him, struggling to process the sudden shift. The abruptness left me unprepared, and my confusion only seemed to amuse him further. Don't play dumb, he said with a scornful laugh. If I hadn't pushed you, you'd never have admitted the truth. How long are you going to keep acting like the victim? Emma. Then came the slam of the door as he stormed out. That night, I felt like he had crushed me underfoot, grinding me into the ground. Later, I found out that day was Tanya's engagement party. She had married an older man in their circle, someone nearly twice her age. Ethan's mother had tried matchmaking us again after that, but I shut her down cold. Every time she tried to talk to me privately, I curtly reminded her that my life was not meant to serve a cripple. Eventually, she gave up. This time around, I had achieved some small successes and avoided everything that could drag me down. When Quinn broke up with her boyfriend, we immediately returned to the guest house. Life was peaceful for about a month until her ex showed up. That day, he scared off 2/3 of our customers. Furious, Quinn called the police, but he smirked and told the officers, "This is just a relationship dispute. My ex owes me money, and I'm here to collect. Once I get it, I'll leave." The first time, the police sent him away. The second time, they did the same. But after repeated incidents, they admitted they couldn't do much since he wasn't technically breaking the law. These guys who know just enough about the law to exploit it are the hardest to deal with, the officer said. Quinn was in tears. You've already taken over 100,000 from me, and now you're trying to turn it around? You'll get nothing. Her ex sneered, dragged a chair to the front door, and planted himself there like he had no intention of leaving until he got paid. For 3 days, our business was a disaster. Just when Quinn was about to give in and hand over the money, the security company I had hired finally arrived. In no time, they had beaten him to the point where he was covered in bruises. As he was being dragged out, Ethan arrived. The ex-battered and bloodied, immediately perked up. Well, if it isn't the famous Ethan Taylor. Everyone knows you around here. Got cheated on by your fiancé. And now you're playing hero? How about you toss me 880,000 and we call it even? Ethan, his face flushing red, barked at him to leave. If I catch you causing trouble here again, I'll beat you every time. The ex merely smirked and looked Ethan up and down with disdain. Do you still think you're some rich heir? Everyone knows about your family now. Pathetic, broke, and shameless. Ethan clenched his fists, trembling on the verge of losing control. I didn't care enough to intervene and went back into the guest house. My money and influence were my confidence. I didn't need Ethan playing the hero, but I underestimated his persistence. Limping, he dragged himself into the guest house. His eyes full of envy as he glanced around. Finally, I broke the silence. Do your parents know you're here? He didn't answer. Don't tell me you came here just to see my guest house. The sight of him standing there, sulking, tested my patience. When I was about to lose my temper, he finally spoke. Emma, my family is bankrupt. Even though I had mentally prepared for something like this, hearing it from him still stunned me. How? Your family owns multiple storefronts in high-traffic areas. Those alone should have been enough to ensure you'd never have to worry about money. Under my questioning, Ethan, a grown man, broke down and started sobbing in the guest house. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of my past self in him, the desperate, broken version of me from my previous life. But Ethan hadn't treated me with half the patience I was showing now. Back then, every time I cried, he would slam the door and leave without a second glance. Emma, I regret it. I want you back, he said, his voice trembling. I couldn't help but laugh. In our past life, he regretted being with me. Now, he regretted losing me. Did he really think he could have it both ways? I was never by your side to begin with. I replied coldly. What is there to come back to? Let's talk about your bankruptcy instead. After some hesitation, Ethan finally explained the situation. He had hoped to marry me using our old connection. But after spending most of the 1.88 million dowry, he wanted to make money quickly. Somewhere, he heard about a guaranteed investment scheme, promising 100% returns. First, he hesitated. But after seeing his ex-wife invest 200,000 and reap extravagant rewards, gifts, luxury foods, and jewelry, he was tempted. Blinded by greed, Ethan poured all of his family's savings into the scheme, even taking out loans totaling millions. By the time he realized something was off, the scammer had vanished without a trace. The Taylor family was completely drained and buried under mountains of debt. The bank had repossessed the Taylor's shops, leaving the entire family without any source of income. Emma, I know I was wrong, Ethan said, his voice trembling. I should have listened to my mom back then. If I had married you, my family wouldn't have ended up like this. I frowned in disgust. That's your own stupidity. It has nothing to do with who you marry. But Ethan shook his head, his tears landing on my arm. I wiped them off, annoyed. Just as he continued, my dad found out that the scammer was connected to Tanya's husband. They did this to get revenge on me. Hearing this, I almost applauded. Who would have thought Tanya was capable of such a move? With the Taylors bankrupt, Mrs. Taylor had a stroke and was hospitalized. Though my mom had grown distant from her over the years, she still visited the hospital out of old neighborly obligation. She sighed heavily while calling me. Emma, you remember how much Mrs. Taylor took care of you when you were little. She's had a stroke and is paralyzed now. You should go visit her. She doesn't have much time left. The stroke was far worse than I imagined. Mrs. Taylor was completely bedridden, unable to move. Her mouth twisted to one side with drool dripping down uncontrollably. When she saw me, tears streamed from her eyes. Her garbled attempts to speak were unintelligible. But I had no desire to hear her ask me to marry Ethan again. Politely but distantly, I placed a basket of fruit by her bedside. "Take care and get well soon," I said. My mom didn't speak either. She simply peeled an apple in silence. Ethan's poor decisions had brought ruin upon his entire family. In my past life, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor had treated me kindly at first after I married Ethan. But when I failed to conceive, their attitudes cooled. This time, with Ethan crippled, they still wanted to tie me to him. I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. But my mom, ever soft-hearted, paid some of Mrs. Taylor's hospital bills and hired a caregiver to look after her. When we returned home, she wept. How did things get so bad for Mrs. Taylor? She used to feed the stray cats around the neighborhood. And now look at her. It's all because Ethan turned out to be such a disappointment. Emma, can we get the money back from that scam? It's possible, I said, but unlikely. This was a deliberate attack on Ethan by Tanya. That money might already be in her hands. My mom sighed. We won't bother with Ethan, but Mrs. Taylor's care will cost a fortune. I shrugged. I didn't mind contributing to Mrs. Taylor's care. But Tanya was another story. For the first time, I felt a flicker of desire to confront her. Tanya's husband was a powerful local figure. I wasn't about to charge in recklessly, but persistence paid off. Eventually, I uncovered a scandalous secret involving Tanya and her stepson. When we met at a cafe, Tanya gave me a condescending smile. "Well, look who it is. I thought I'd crushed you years ago, and now you dare show your face to me." I smiled back but said nothing, gesturing for her to sit, curious to see what I had up my sleeve. She complied, but the moment she saw the photos on my phone, her smug demeanor vanished. She straightened in her seat. "Emma Carter, what's the meaning of this?" I tossed my phone onto the table. "Oh, nothing much. Just curious about how you've managed to get along so well with your stepson." Tanya lunged for my phone, trying to delete the photos, but they were set as my wallpaper, and she didn't have the password. "What do you want?" "Emma, it's been years. Why stir up trouble now? Can't you stand to see me happy?" I raised an eyebrow. "Happy? Hardly. Your involvement in my misery in the last life gives me every reason to be here. And let's be honest, Tanya, you've hardly won. Your husband is a sleazy old man with yellowed teeth and a disturbing reputation. And these pictures, they're hard to look at even for me." Without preamble, I got to the point. "The Taylor's money. Your people stole it. Return it." Tanya threw her head back in laughter, tears streaming down her face as she mocked me. "So this is about Ethan, isn't it? Emma, don't tell me you still have feelings for that fool. You poor thing. Have you never had a good man in your life?" I crossed my arms and fixed her with a cold stare. "Say what you want about me, but don't assume I'm here for Ethan. That's the one thing I won't tolerate." Tanya leaned back smugly. "Oh, come on. Emma, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, so it's easy for you to look down on people like me. I've climbed my way up using men. What's wrong with that? I despise people like you, reeking of wealth yet judging me for doing what I need to survive. You may have money, but in the end, you still lost to me." I smirked. "If you won, then why are you so obsessed with ruining the Taylors? Admit it. This is all about your pride." Her face hardened, and she bit out a warning. "Emma, I can destroy the Taylors, and I can destroy you too." Unfazed, I tapped my phone screen, making the wallpaper reappear. Tanya's gaze locked on the images, her confidence faltering for the first time. I smiled sweetly and said, "By 6 p.m. tomorrow, transfer the money to my account. If I don't see it, my wallpaper might make its way to some other people." With that, I got up and walked away. As I passed Tanya, I leaned in and whispered, "Wasn't Ethan the one you worked so hard to win over? Why treat your former golden goose like a stain on your past now?" I hadn't taken more than a few steps when the sound of a glass smashing echoed behind me. I smirked. Married into wealth, yet still so easily rattled. How fragile. The next day, the money arrived in my account. I immediately transferred it to my mom. "Do you want to send this to the Taylors?" I asked her with a smile. But after giving it to them, Don't bother with them anymore. We're not the same kind of people. My mom was quiet for a long time before finally nodding. All right. Mrs. Taylor was still bedridden, and I doubted Mr. Taylor would continue caring for her indefinitely. A family that raised someone like Ethan couldn't hold itself together for long. But that wasn't our concern anymore. We were just strangers now. My mom sent the money over, then packed up with my dad to come help me with my expanded guest house. It was also a good excuse to distance themselves from the Taylors. 2 years later, Quinn hesitantly brought up something during one of our conversations. As always, she was careful not to upset me. I went home to visit my parents and ran into Ethan, she said softly. He's working in a restaurant now to make ends meet. But, you know how small our town is. Once word got out, my scumbag ex showed up to mock him. From what I heard, Ethan keeps losing his jobs after just a few days because those guys harass him relentlessly. He's been reduced to begging under a bridge. I nodded, feeling no ripple of emotion. Compared to how he'd driven me to the brink of suicide in my past life, this was nothing. But I was curious about one thing. What about his parents? They've completely abandoned him. Quinn hesitated. His dad left his mom and him about a year ago to live with his mistress. Apparently, the mistress has a son who's only 2 years younger than Ethan. As for his mom, she passed away 6 months ago, likely due to poor care. It wasn't surprising. This ending was predictable. Still, when I met Quinn's gaze, I asked, "Do you think I'm being too cold-hearted?" She frowned, then paused before shaking her head. The Taylors brought this on themselves. What does any of this have to do with you? I nodded and turned back to brewing tea. But Quinn continued chattering behind me. Emma, don't you dare feel bad for that scumbag. Feeling sorry for men like him is a guaranteed way to ruin your own life. True, I replied. Luckily, this time, we've both steered clear of toxic men and found a fresh start.